everyone. My name is Isabel Briggs. I am the teen librarian here at the Altadena Library. Thank you so much for joining us. I am insanely thrilled to have a very special guest with us here today. Caitlin Doughty is a mortician, activist, and funeral industry rabble-rouser. This is her bio. In 2011, she founded the death acceptance collective, The Order of the Good Death, which has spawned the death positive movement. Her educational web series, Ask a Mortician, has been viewed almost 150 million times. All three of her books, two of which I have right here because the third one is currently checked out. So good on whoever has that one checked out. You are ahead of the game. All three of her books, Smoke Gets in Your Eyes, From Here to Eternity, and Will My Cat Eat My Eyeballs, were New York Times bestsellers. She lives in Los Angeles, where we are sort of living as well, where she owns a funeral home, Clarity Funerals. And I'm going so excited to welcome. Please give a warm, muted Zoom applause.
Hello, I have appeared on screen as if by magic.
Love a good reveal, like a good moment of drama.
I do need I need a thing for Zoom, and this is so sad, but I'm just imagining having a little stash of glitter or something. So when I come on Zoom, I just throw it at the screen.
Like a little velvet curtain that you can just sort of like draw back. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, we do what we can in these times to make our own fun, you know?
Exactly. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I am super excited to talk to you about your absolutely fascinating career. So a little about you, which you already know, but maybe not everyone else knows. So you have been working in the funeral industry for a while now. You've also published books. You're also a speaker and an author. And I'm really curious to sort of share with, any young people in Altadena in our community who might be interested in sort of some atypical career paths or career paths in mortuary science, sort of how you came to your career. So my first question is, you've written a little bit about, I think it's in Smoke Gets in Your Eyes, about your early experience seeing a death and how that sort of got your interest, I think, in a way, or got you thinking about death at an early age. So my question is, when you were a young person, like as a teenager or as a student, did that interest manifest outwardly, or was that more of a like private sort of thing that you were like sitting in your room like, hey, I'm thinking about all this stuff? Or were you like outwardly like, yes, I am?
Are you asking me if I was a goth? And the answer is sort of yes.
Yes.
Which, speaking of teens, I feel like goth and the sort of dark academia goth is really having a comeback now, which I was like, man, if that was the popping thing when I was 16, I would have been like the person. Give me all the TikTok followers. I can do this aesthetic. I'm on it.
Oh my God.
So I was absolutely. And I think that one of the best advice that I can give people about your career is not something as simple as like, do what you love, never work a day in your life if you're doing what you love, because we know that's not really how it works.
Mm-hmm.
You sometimes just have to work to make money. You have to make work to support your family. You have to work for all sorts of reasons in the world that we live in. But if you can find ways to bring things that have always really interested you into your work, and that is one of the, now it sounds cheesy, like the greatest gifts of my life, that I was able to take this interest in death that I've had ever since I was young.
Mm-hmm.
And combine it with my interest in this sort of darker aesthetic and my sense of humor and my theatrical background, because I did theater in college and when I first moved to San Francisco. And I guess all I'm trying to say is everything you're doing now, whether you're doing activities, you're doing student government, you're doing, you read certain types of books, you're super interested in a certain kind of subculture. All of those things could end up in your final career, because I feel like all of those things have ended up in my career.
Yeah.
And so that's totally possible. Even if you end up doing something totally different than what I do, and
Yeah.
let's face it, you probably will end up doing something totally different than the weird job that I have. You still, everything you're doing now will show up again.
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
strange ways in your life, in ways that you don't expect. Like,
Mhm.
did you know, you always know you were going to be a librarian, or did
Gosh,
that?
absolutely not. But I feel like I got some great advice at one point, which was from my mom being like, you talk about books more than you talk about anything else. And having that realization of like, oh, yeah, that is a thing that I've always been talking about, regardless of the ideas I had about my career. Like, this is the thing that is consistent. And then being like, oh, yeah.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
just,
And you
I've
can,
always
when you
had
get
this
old,
interest. Yeah.
exactly. And when you get older, you can kind of look back on that. And I was always in the library, just obsessed with books.
That's one of my
I never,
questions I have to ask,
oh
like,
yeah. Oh, big. Oh my gosh. Kaneohe
library.
Library, Kaneohe, Hawaii, my
Oh.
home base and beloved location. I read all the time. And I never was that interested in writing at all.
Ah, okay,
Um,
interesting.
and I think that in some ways so right now I make YouTube videos, the
Mhm.
Ask Mortician series, and I write books, among many other things. But those are two things that I put a lot of time in, and I do. And frankly, if my job could just be consuming those two things, because I genuinely love watching YouTube, and I genuinely love reading books, and I do both of them all the time. And I do think that's kind of why I ended up making them,
Mhm.
because if you do have a really genuine interest in consuming something, you start to understand the contours of it. You start to understand like beats and narratives and what works and what doesn't work. And even now, my videos have started to become much more storytelling, like a storytelling arc about a particular story,
Mhm.
because people like stories. And that's the kind of, they tell you, if you're gonna, no matter what job you're gonna do, you should be a good writer. And
Mhm.
I think that that is sort of true. And I first heard that and I was like, oh, I don't know if that's true. But it absolutely is. Even if you're not actually going to write books, you write all the time,
Mhm.
all my day long. I'm writing scripts for videos. I'm writing books. I'm writing emails to, families that I work with. I'm writing emails to all of my different people. I'm writing talks. I'm just writing, writing, writing. So I think even if you want to end up doing something, like you want to do what you know teenagers want to do and like be a social media star, you still are going to spend a lot of your time
Writing the
so if
caption.
you love books and you love information, that just makes you a better writer and a better thinker.
Yeah, I think that's super true, right? Like, it's something about like the more you just like, if you're just reading a lot or just consuming a lot, you get more into that, and then you know how to then like produce it again and send it into the world. Do you have any favorite books from like your teenage years? Like, what did you love to read as a teen?
Ooh, I liked Gothic literature, like
Okay.
old Gothic
Yeah.
literature. Um, like dark castles and women in despair and Frankenstein and that sort of vibe, definitely. um I liked the books that I was supposed to be reading when I was like 13 or 14. I was reading when I was like 7 or 8, like Sweet Valley High and things that were like a little bit too advanced for me. But yeah, mostly sort of darker things, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah.
But I lived in Hawaii. Keep in mind, I was like born and raised in Hawaii. So I was living in this
Right.
beautiful tropical environment. And yet I was so drawn to these darker things. And I think that it wasn't pathological at all. It wasn't like, oh, she's,
Yeah,
twisting
yeah, yeah.
into the macabre. Like it was just a yin and yang, a
Yeah.
genuine desire to understand why death was so inspiring in a way. And I
Mhm.
still find death so inspiring, because the fact that we're going to die is how we get anything done at all.
Yeah.
If all of us, would we be on this Zoom call right now if we were going to live another 2,000 years?
Yeah.
Nobody has time to achieve or to to do these things, or it's a problem if you have too much time, I should say. Too much time causes the problem. So the fact that we have this deadline is what inspires us to create art and inspires us to have careers and have children and all of these different things. So I'm really inspired by death, and I have always been, I think.
Mm-hmm. When you first, did you have any career ideas before you started getting into the funeral business? Like, you're like, oh, okay, I'm kind of gothy. I don't know if I want to be a funeral director. Did you have any other idea at any point?
Yeah, well, not only did I it wasn't that I didn't want to be a funeral director. I didn't even think of it for some reason.
Yeah.
It did not cross my mind. So when I was in high school, I wanted to be a forensic pathologist. I wanted to be the one that did the autopsies, and so I still wanted to work with dead bodies, which should have been fine.
Just in a different way, yeah.
Yeah, should have been a clear sign of this. But I wanted to be a forensic pathologist, but I took AP biology. Mm-hmm. And think I got a 2 on the final test. I was not great at biology. And that's basically, to become a forensic pathologist, you have to become a doctor. And you go all the way through medical school. And then at the end, you specialize in pathology. So you have to go through whole medical school to become to get into that sort of position and do those autopsies. So I realized that would probably not be the kindest path to me.
For sure.
And for a while, I wanted to be a lawyer. I wanted to be a constitutional lawyer, and I wanted to be on the Supreme Court, which, with what's happening now, is sort of a slightly dark thing to remember.
We have the first Mortician Supreme Court justice.
Still could happen. I've got opinions, rulings to give. But I think that I looking back on it, I wasn't very imaginative in that. We didn't, obviously we had the internet and we had those things, but it was almost like, well, if I'm not going to be a doctor, then I'm going to be a lawyer.
Sure.
Those are not the two things that exist. There's so many other options. And when I went to college, I really did figure that out and dropped that idea, majored in medieval history, which I knew was not going to get me a job. And then I moved to San Francisco and continued for the first year there doing what I ended up doing in college, which was writing and directing theater shows.
Oh, okay.
And I wanted to do a particular type of show that I called macabre spectacle, which was basically like an immersive dark theater event. I did a full one on the more industrial works of Edgar Allan Poe.
Oh my God.
And it was, you were performed, and there was sounds, and there was lights, and there was creepy video being projected, and you were just supposed to feel like you were in this. It was basically a way for people to feel closer to death in their own mortality in an artistic way.
Like a theatrical memento mori.
Yeah, exactly. A theatrical memento mori. And really, it was during that time when I was in San Francisco and wasn't really finding a community like I had in college that wanted to do this with me, and didn't know what I wanted to do, that I decided to start applying at the crematory, or various crematories, until someone gave me a job. And that was when it slid into place. Okay, the greatest macabre spectacle of them all is a funeral.
Yeah.
Wait a second. There could be something here that I just hadn't even thought of before.
Yeah. So when you first started working in the crematory, what was the reaction of your friends and family? Were they surprised, or were they like, yeah, no, go figure?
This is funny because it's split. My friends, every single one of them went, oh yeah, that makes sense. They were like, oh cool. Yeah. They were not perturbed by that at all. They thought it made perfect sense. They didn't have to make it work in their brain somehow that I would go do this. It just made sense to them. Mm-hmm. And my parents, especially my mother, she was a little I don't know why you're doing this. She was a little, she was surprised, but all the signs were there. Mom.
Yeah.
I remember I did a talk where I showed this picture it's very timely, from my Hello Kitty diary from when I was, I think in second grade, third grade. And the entry was October 31st.
Oh, great.
It said, "Dear diary, today is Halloween. Finally, it's come." And that's all it said. It was an empty page in a Hello Kitty diary, and it was how excited I was for Halloween. So, mom and dad, I feel like those signs were there. I think that it's not that they like specifically didn't want me to be a mortician, although I think that there are a lot of young people who want to be morticians who do struggle with that fear or do have the idea that their parents would be really upset or freaked out if someone just said my family would do an intervention. Exactly. Like, I think that there are a lot of people who feel like their family just would not get it at all. And it's not that my family didn't get it. I think it was more that they were like, okay, this is another, like, Caitlin's majoring in medieval history, I guess. She's doing a macabre spectacle theater, whatever that is, I guess. She's trying to open a funeral home. Okay. Like, I think it was, and they're supportive, but I think it was just one slightly weird thing after another. And I believed in myself. I was like, listen, I got this. I know it's weird, but I think it's gonna work. And something that should be said is that I was in a pretty privileged position in the sense that I could be broke trying to do these strange things and pursue these dreams because I didn't have children. I didn't have to take care of my parents. I didn't have, a family to take care of. I didn't have really bad health problems. Like, there were a lot of things that I don't want to just say, like, follow your dreams and be broke and don't care, because not everybody can do that. But if you do have the ability to just, eat a lot of toast and ramen and
work in a crematory
and like pursue strange avenues that might end up being very fruitful. And that's exactly what happened for me, is that because I was able to be like, you know what, I'm going to try and get a job at a crematory. That seems very interesting. And we're just going to see how it goes. I'm 22, 23 years old. And it changed my whole life. And it put me on my path, and it inspired me. And it's what the industry I'm still working in 13 years later. So, I think that's the sort of deal, is that, like, if you can experiment like that, then you probably should. Yeah. Especially if you're at an event like this, you're already kind of like a weird and interesting person. To start with. Like, you're already part of like the weirdo group, and just open your mind and don't put too much pressure on yourself to pick one thing. Just go out there, put your feelers out.
I love that. Well, and so sort of related, you've talked in some of your books and some of your videos about other sort of writers who influenced your approach to sort of like death positivity. But like, I feel like you sort of have a very unique path in that you were like, well, I'm going to work in a crematory, I'm going to start my own funeral home, and then I'm going to do this video series, and I'm going to write books. And like, did you have any mentors or sort of role models who you were like, I like what they're doing and I'm going to combine it with that? Or like, were there anyone who you sort of looked up to or helped inform some of your decisions?
That's a great question. I didn't have any direct mentors because I think there was before the social media era, there wasn't really a model of what the type of advocacy I do and the way that I do it. But there were a lot of people. One person that comes to mind when you ask that is a woman named Gretchen Warden, who used to be the curator of the Mutter Museum in Philadelphia.
Oh, yeah.
And if you're not familiar with the Mutter Museum, it's old anatomical specimens. They have, the soap lady and the first pair of conjoined twins who were skeletonized, and people who had, very specific diseases and giant megacolons and babies in jars and whatnot. And this woman was just so profoundly enthusiastic about these specimens and these collections and how to translate that to the public. And she would go on David Letterman. She would go on these like big shows, big talk shows, and kind of like, like the guy brings on his weird animals or something now, but it would be like, we're bringing on a giant colon.
I wonder if that footage
and people would of course be like, what? Ooh, weird. People would have their reactions to it, but she was just like smiling and I think that to me is what is the most inspiring thing, is just being committed to thinking death is cool and important.
Yeah.
And like that was so inspiring to me, because I think that is what has made me the most successful as an advocate, is that I just don't apologize for the things that I'm interested in and the message that I have. Because it's so easy, especially when you're doing something a little strange, like I'm doing and talking publicly about death. People, you know, can go like, this lady is weird. What you're talking about is weird. I don't like this. Ew, gross. Bodies, what? You know, they have all those typical reactions, but I just blow right on through those. I just go, nope. I am talking about death.
I'm
talking about decomposition. I'm talking about cremation. I'm talking about embalming. I'm talking about corpses. I'm talking about all of these things. And I don't in any way apologize for that. And I don't feel like I have to. And so advocates like that, like a Gretchen Warden, who are just unapologetic in that connection to death and being interested in. And she actually died before I started this, unfortunately. She died very young. But yeah, that's a good example, I think.
And I feel like the unapologeticness is sort of also a part of the like way that you accomplish your mission too, of like, I'm going to be unapologetic about this and be very bold about it, because we should all be like confronted with it and comfortable with it, and it's not something to apologize for. So like the mode of your delivery is also accomplishing the message that is meant to be delivered.
Yeah, I'm not the weird one. If you're like in denial about death, that's your issue. That's we can work on that. I mean, I guess I will say that it is a balance though, in the sense of like, we've all seen advocates be like, I am this and I don't care. Activists like, I don't care what you think, I am this, unapologetic, and that means they're not as empathetic. So I do try and have that balance of understanding people's boundaries, and I'm not trying to like rip the Band-Aid off and like, you know, shove your face into an open grave and, you know, make you feel overwhelmed and terrible by death. But I think that my sort of positive, happy attitude about it is kind of the spoonful of sugar that helps the harder message go down.
Gotcha. Have there been moments where you've doubted your career path, or like doubted some of the choices you've made getting here?
Sure. I mean, I've been doing this for like 13 years now. I would say that the overall project of reforming the funeral industry and changing our relationship with death, no, never. Like I've never, not only have I never like fundamentally doubted the underlying message of that, I've never doubted that I should be doing it. I think like that's even in my darkest moments. I'm like, yeah, but you know that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. There's definitely like, if you hope to make it through life without failures, you're going to have a hard time. And I sort of did have a hard time, because there were certain things like my first funeral home that I opened closed, and I was lucky enough to open a whole new funeral home and sort of like retool things and think about things differently and get the right team in place. And like, it's going really well now, this new funeral home. But the fact that, you know, I had anything that didn't work just right, or even that I put out videos that like don't get many views because people just don't get it, or projects that I've tried to do that people like, but don't totally resonate with everyone. And so you can't keep doing them. Sometimes you have to kind of throw things at the wall to see what sticks and what's going to really be impactful for people, and that people are really going to like and relate to. So yeah, I think that failure is here's a good acronym. It's shame. Feeling of shame, for some people, including me, stands for should have already mastered everything.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
And this is especially if you're a woman. It's really hard to not feel like you should already be the best at everything you do. And you should never fail. And sometimes it's better not to try than to fail.
Yeah.
And ultimately, we know that's not true. It's better to try. It's better to try something, to put it out there, to give it a shot. And, you know, my ended up being that throughout my career, I've had many more successes than I've had failures. But the successes you can just forget about, and then the failures you can harp on and feel terrible about.
There's a Toni Morrison quote that I think I'm going to get a little wrong, but it's like, I read it the other day and it's like, forgive yourself for not knowing the things you didn't know before you knew them.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I end up feeling that way. Or I try and tell myself that all the time. Because I mean, and the thing is like all you can do is look at it and go, okay, be honest. Did you learn something?
Mm-hmm.
Did you learn something valuable? And are you kind of a better person than you were at that time? A better person, like a kinder person, a smarter person about something, a more person who understands human nature a little more, or understands a business thing a little more. And if the answers to all of that are yes, it wasn't actually a failure.
That's amazing. That's good advice. So you
That's from my business lady book. Boss, funeral boss book.
Upcoming, yeah.
Hashtag death corpse boss.
Exactly. So I also, this is, I guess, related maybe, but so I know that your message is about death positivity and advocating for death acceptance. Are there still moments in that you've seen or witnessed or experienced where like the solemnness of death is still overwhelming sometimes? Like, are there moments where you're like, it's hard to be kind of positive about this sucks? Like, is that part of the yin and the yang too, of being like, this is a thing that we should all like be more comfortable with, but it can still be really hard and depressing sometimes? Does that ever happen?
Yeah, I mean now, right? Like this year, 2020. And that is, and I will go back to the idea of the overall idea of the message, which is, I think in 2020, it's very fair to be like, okay, you're the order of the good death. Like, we're not seeing a lot of good deaths right now. We're seeing COVID deaths. We're seeing people, killed by police officers. We're seeing situations where you can't even go in and see your grandma as she's dying because everything is shut down. These are bad deaths.
Okay.
Why are we talking about good deaths? Yeah. And my response to that is always, okay, but good deaths are still the goal, right? Like that's still our goal for every person in the United States and the world, wherever you are. That is our goal, to get those good deaths. And there are a lot of societal things, whether it has to do with racism or health insurance or class issues or all of these things that we know are making it harder for certain people to have the good death and get access to it. But wait a second, that's still the goal. Like, the point is for all of us who have the ability to change it to look at all of these things and go, okay, how can we get this person the good death who wouldn't normally get it? How can we get this person the good death? How can we get all of those things? So I hear what you're saying, and there are definitely times where it's like, oh, wow, this is overwhelming. But if anything, I hope that what the pandemic is going to show us is that we need change. We need things to be reformed. We need things to look different than they do now in so many ways, and not just death, but in so many other ways too. And so I still want to believe in humanity's capacity to do that.
It's a good death. Yeah. What is the best part of your job as a mortician and funeral director? Specifically, you have a very hyphenate job, but
a very hyphenate job. I think so. It's been interesting because we're sort of transitioning to a time where, like, I am like I'm more the boss now. Like in so many ways, I keep getting like moving up to the boss, which sort of which is, I guess, good. Like being a boss is hashtag corpse boss. Being the boss is good, but being the boss also takes you further away from where you started, like the hands-on. I was the cremator. I was scraping the bones from the machine and grinding them, and I really felt like I was deep in there. And now I have people working with me and for me who are doing those jobs more often than I am, but just being able to create a funeral home where the values are so in line with what I believe, and training new people coming in, funeral directors, to do those jobs and like continue to push it forward, if that makes sense. And so when a family comes in knowing that they're going to get full transparency that they're going to get a funeral director who is happy to answer any question, even if it's difficult or hard, knowing they're going to have a funeral director that wants them to participate and brings them forward and says, hey, here's some things you can do with mom. You know, do you want to cut a lock of hair? Do you want to watch her be pushed into the cremation machine and push the button to start the machine? You know, what makes you comfortable? And having that different kind of a relationship with a funeral director and being able to do that with myself, and then now pass it on to other people and make it a thing that's ingrained just outside of my like personal belief systems. Because you can't, I think that's also what you sort of start to learn, is that your actions, your singular actions as you yourself, are important. But you're not going to reform things or change the world if it's just you doing it. You have to get other people doing it. You have to make it a bigger thing. And then it gets to be a bigger thing. And then you're like, it's too big. It's overwhelming. I can't do it. So I think that is I don't know if that answered your question very well.
No. I think that's really cool to hear that, like, right, you maybe the things that you once loved about or still love about a job, but like the things you once got to do and you're like, this is why I loved it, because I got to, you know, be in the nitty gritty and like be doing all of the work myself. Like maybe you don't do those things anymore, but then you get to like share that love, I guess, in some ways, and be like, ooh, I'm gonna show other people how exciting this is.
Yeah, and now the people that I work with are doing it, and they're putting it out there, and it's nice to have. And I have everybody who I work with now, who's either an employee of mine or a colleague of mine, is just so on the same page and so like excited about the work. And yeah, it's a really nice feeling. All of us have had jobs where we've had colleagues who are kind of like, you know, the weak links, or they're like, you know, they're not the greatest. And I will say that there's nothing better than having everyone be like a great, supportive, smart, hardworking colleague. That's really nice.
Congratulations that you have.
Thank you. Yeah, really cool. Dream.
So I have a couple questions that people sent me from the community. So this is a question from Rebecca. What's up, Rebecca? I hope you're here. So she says, hi, I'm a big fan of Caitlin's content and have been for a while. Mortuary science is my thing, but as a kid finishing high school, I'm not sure where to go from here. Do you have to go to a big mortuary school? Does this entail long years of medical school? What can I do if a big, expensive school is something I can't pay for? I'm very much concerned for the future and I need help. Thank you so much.
Oh, that's a great question and perfect for younger folk. Hi, Rebecca. Rebecca, do you live in California? You may answer now in the chat. I will await your answer.
We will wait. We'll wait patiently.
I do not. Okay. So my best advice for you would be a couple of things. One, first of all, if you want to be involved in death or the mortuary business, you do not have to go to medical school. So that's a positive. Just as I did when I was young, just throw that out the window. I'll leave that for someone else. But mortuary school is also not totally necessary depending on where you are. So something that I always encourage people is to try to somehow get closer to the funeral industry. And you might not be able to do that till you graduate or till you turn 18 or whatever that is. But even if you're just delivering flowers or you're doing a removal driver is a really good way to get your foot into the funeral industry, because that's just going and picking up bodies and bringing them in. But it shows you if you can deal with really sad people, which is a lot of what the job is. And it shows you if you can deal with the dead bodies, which is another big part of the job. I mean, sad people, dead bodies are the two biggest hurdles for a lot of people getting into the mortuary field. So you want to know, you probably have maybe seen those two things before, but never together in quite such an intense way. So if you can have some sort of engagement with those two categories of people, dead and sad, and handle that, and you feel like it's right for you, that's when you really know that, you know what, I may have to go to mortuary school. I may have to do more here. Another thing that I tell people in your position is, it doesn't have to be mortuary school you're a mortician or funeral director, and that's your life and that's the path. Death positivity is such a larger umbrella of people doing fascinating projects that are, and the most successful ones are ones that are very true to the people themselves. Like they're very reflective of the person and how they do things. So for example, if you're like a silversmith and that's your passion, and you turn that into taking hair and ashes and creating beautiful mourning jewelry, that's combining death positivity with your existing passion. The same thing goes for, if you're a writer and you're passionate about writing, well then write about, do articles about this subject. If you're,
a librarian.
Yeah, if you're a librarian, here you go. Perfect example. That's exactly it. Like, and I've been so lucky to work with a lot of librarians who just totally get it. And like, we'll have a whole like beautiful section at a carol, like in the front of the, display at the front of the library with books about death and engaging with death, or doing teen programming about death. So you were able to say, okay, I'm not going to go out and be a mortician, but I'm passionate about this. This is something I'm interested in. How can I bring this, support this and bring this out? So I don't want to discourage you from being a mortician. I think that's totally valid if that's what you want to do, but realize that that's not your only option. It's not like, you're death positive. You're not a mortician though. Or like, you didn't become a mortician, so you're not really serious about it. Like, in fact, like, what we need more than anything is people who are passionate about their particular thing, putting a deathy spin on it.
Yeah.
And putting something unique on it. And that could just be becoming a mortician, but it could also be endless other things.
That's cool. I hope that was helpful, Rebecca. And I have another question. This is from Carlos. I think I saw Carlos in the chat earlier. So hi, Carlos. He says, I'm a huge fan of your work and your push towards more eco-friendly death practices, which actually I might ask you to explain a little bit more for anyone who's not familiar. You exposed me to topics I've never even heard of, and you have opened my eyes to subjects that I've since grown very passionate about. For my question, I would like to ask how someone like me can continue going down on a death positive route and keep an open dialogue with those around me when it comes to the topics they might not find easy to discuss. And then he says, thank you for everything you've done for me and others, and thank you for your time here during this tough situation.
Oh, thank you, Carlos. That's sweet. I mean, that's like, it seems like sort of inspired by the same place, right? Just, I am inspired by this movement. I am inspired to help people understand death more, and what can I do to be better about that? So I think that my answer is a little bit the same. Two things I want to bring back from earlier in the conversation. First is following your own particular passion in the thing that you are best at. And second, being unapologetic in your interest in this and your passion for this, because that also really helps when you are talking to other people, when you're talking to your family, when you're talking to your friends, making sure that you don't have to come to the conversation like, well, there's this, I'm kind of interested in natural burial and I'm interested in aquamation. And this is not my impression of you, Carlos, but you know what I mean? Like, being timid in it, you can be with, full-throated authority, somebody who really cares about this movement and these changes. And especially with something like, with these eco ideas, we're dealing with climate change. It's a real existential fear for a lot of people. It's kind of it's like the smog that hangs over all of our thoughts and daily life, right? And when you're talking about eco-death, we're really talking about both accepting death, like the death of the planet, and these ideas of, for example, you asked me to talk about this, like natural burial, which is just a simple hole in the ground, or aquamation, which is high heat water that cremates the body down to bone instead of cremation. which was just legalized in California, so lucky you. Or recomposition, which is human composting. These new ideas, are they the single thing that will solve climate change? No, obviously not. But they so radically change our relationship to the earth when we feel, and that's why I want to be eaten by animals. That's why I'm interested in that, because I like the idea that I'm not a human who like controls the animal kingdom and they're all here just for my pleasure. No, we're animals too. Spoiler. That's us, you and me. We're little fleshy organic material animals, and we're not above or below any other animal. And we're all part of this cycle. So part of the message of these eco-death ideas is to show people, is to kind of cut down on the hubris of humanity and the assumption that we should just be able to take and take and take and take. You know, we should be able to take all the resources of the planet. We should be able to make animals extinct. We should be able to, you know, have our own special grave in a vault underground pumped full of chemicals forever and ever. It's saying, hey, maybe that idea hasn't gotten us to the place we need to be as human culture. And maybe we need to return to a bit more of a like natural cycle of life kind of thing. And so that's another place that we need so many voices and so many people doing different. Are you doing art projects around it? Are you doing, you know, advocacy work around it? Are you just telling all your friends and family? What is it that is your special idea that you are doing to get people to understand these idees? So yeah, that's my answer, is that I
unapologetic. I like,
yeah, support you, but I can't tell you what to do because I don't know your specific talents. All I can tell you to do is use those specific talents, which I know you have, to forward this work in the way that works for you. And that's what I have found to work, is that like my specific talents happen to be that I'm like a real ham and like pretty good, you know, I'm a good talker and I'm pretty good on camera. And it's not like those things are easy. They're very hard for me, but they're effective. And I have found them to work and for people to relate to me in that way. And so what is that for you? What is the version of that for you that's very special and unique to you that you can then take out and spread these ideas further and further? Yes, my ASMR idea spreading fingers.
Right. I love your point about thinking about like natural burial and like our death practices as being tied into our relationship with the environment. And it's not just like, because you know, it's not just our relationship with ourselves and our own mortality. Like it's also about our relationship with the land and our relationship with the animal world. Like that's some next level thinking. I like that a lot. So, and you talk, I've watched some of your videos about, and read some of your books, like about how we need to become more comfortable with death. So like back to just some of the, like, we all just need to get a little bit more comfortable thinking about that. And especially like your video, I think about spending time with a dead body. Like that's a great way to be comfortable with death. But for those of us who maybe like haven't been to a funeral or who have not been around a dead body, do you have recommendations of other ways to sort of like push yourself to become closer to death or more comfortable with it outside of, you know, spending time with the dead body?
Well, like if you don't have a random dead body to like spend time with, sort or ethically source a dead body for that purpose. Yeah, I think already what you're doing, like being here at an event like this, or like watching some of my videos or reading my books, already puts you at
Sure.
a very advanced state compared to most people. Like you're already like well on your way. Congratulations. Because you're just the first step is like admitting that this is interesting, right? Mm-hmm. Like admitting that this is something that interests you and something that is a natural part of life, that death is kind of part of this cycle, and that it's great. It's good, it's great, works, we love it. But something that you also might want to do is really start to explore your relationship with death and the myths that you have around death.
Mm-hmm.
So even just thinking about, okay, wait a second, here's why I'm afraid of death. For this reason, this reason, this reason. Where did those come from?
Mm-hmm.
Where did those feelings come from? How did they get there? Was it my culture that put them there? Was it my parents? Was it television and movies? Was it books that I read? Was it just something was it my religion? Like where did these ideas come from in my mind? And really excavate that, like journal it out, do drawings, do an interpretive dance, whatever works for you, do a TikTok dance, your teen. What is it that caused these feelings in you? Because when you really figure that out, you become a more self-aware person. Mm-hmm. And being a more self-aware person, especially around mortality and death, means that you start to see the world in a different way. And it can then make you even more valuable as like a foot soldier in the death positive revolution. Because we need those people who have that kind of, aren't bringing their own fear to other people. Mm-hmm. Are able to not like put that on other people, but just be able to sit with other people who are afraid of death and have good conversations. And something that I should have mentioned earlier, to anyone who's interested in getting into this world, one of the absolute best things you can do is just be the person in your community who knows this stuff. Mm-hmm. Just be if like someone's uncle dies and you're like, hey, they don't have much money, you can tell them how to call around to different places. Mm-hmm. Tell them that they don't have to choose embalming. You can tell them that if they want a burial, a green burial would be much less expensive than a traditional burial. You can tell them what happens during a cremation. If you know these things, it goes back to this kind of model of community death care where everybody is working together.
Yeah. It's like death mutual aid.
Exactly. No, totally. Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's really cool. Do you think there's is it ever too soon to start thinking about your own death? Like, what are your own plans for your own funeral, or what you want to happen to your body? Never too soon.
No, absolutely not. Especially since we're all like living. I think that the pandemic showed us that, right? We're all living in death at all times. We are living surrounded by death and other people's deaths, and that affects us. That affects us in our mental well-being, and so it can make you feel better and more prepared to have those things prepared in some way. Yeah, absolutely. Anytime. What time is it now? 4:45? Now's the time. Yeah. On a Wednesday, I can think of no better time.
Okay, a few last questions for you. Back to our little teen selves. If you could give a message to teenage Caitlin, what would it be? What would you want to tell her?
Ooh, that's
such a heavy question. I think about that a lot as a teen librarian. I'm like, oh my goodness.
Yeah. No, that's a great question though. I think, speaking of the space-time continuum and messing with it, like killing baby Hitler or whatever, I don't know that I would want to say anything to her because I'm so happy with how it turned out. And I'm so happy. I wouldn't want to put anything into her head
that could change anything.
That changed anything. But at the same time, I think I would just tell her that and what I would tell any young person is you're doing great. You're doing great. And be a nice person, and be a nice person and an ethical person and a kind person, and just be grateful that you have the ability to get weird. You have the ability to make these strange choices for yourself, and that you have the confidence to make them.
And there's such power in owning your weird too. I feel like that's a message I always wish I could give to my teenage self, any teens I know. It's lean into whatever the weird thing about yourself is. Let it out, because that might be your amazing golden ticket, kind of oh wait, I always thought I was weird because I was into death. But that's I gotta work on that. Yeah.
Well, I absolutely. And I remember when I was in high school, there was this idea that you were supposed to be this well-rounded teen or whatever. So I was in student council and editor of the yearbook, and I played the saxophone, and I did all these things. And like it very about the time I was going to college, and then very soon after, it switched over to like, did you play the like Tibetan pan flute at a like high level, or like did you travel to Pago Pago for 2 years and go to high school like among the indigenous people? Like it switched over to like, we want people to have these specific fascinating things about them, and like still be well-rounded, obviously. But if you have something that you're really passionate about, there's, especially in today's weird world, you can probably make it work for you.
Truly.
You know, like does that mean that we should all be like weird freelancers forever? No, that's not good. But at the same time, like you can make an interesting weird thing work for you.
Yes, I love that. Amazing. So you mentioned earlier, this is great, your Hello Kitty journal where you were like, it's Halloween, finally. So in honor of the holiday this week, what is your best Halloween costume if you are someone who dresses up for Halloween?
Okay, I have a couple. I think the one that got the biggest reaction ever was this was my junior year of college, I think. I went as normal. I just went like as a normal person. So I went to the University of Chicago. I wore like a University of Chicago, just like hoodie, sweatshirt, and like a baseball cap, and painted my nails pink, and had a ponytail, and like wore some sneakers, and borrowed some like track pants, and wore none of my like rings or my
right. You're like, haha, look at me now.
And my friends didn't recognize me. I had to like walk up and be like, hey, and they were like, what is going on? It was so jarring for them.
That's pretty fun. That's pretty edgy.
So that kind of goes with our whole conversation. Edgy. If you embrace your weird enough, normal can be a Halloween costume.
Exactly. That's amazing. That's a great one. And then I guess to wrap it up, because we're here at the library, what is the last great book that you read?
Ooh, you know what I'm listening to on audiobook right now, and I never used to be into audiobooks, but I feel like all our brains are a little broken.
Yeah.
And sometimes love reading books, but sometimes now I just need someone to talk at me. I'm listening to Kazuo Ishiguro, Nobel Prize winner Kazuo Ishiguro. I'm listening to his book, The Buried Giants, which
I want to read that. Is it good?
It is good, and the audiobook is really good. It's really like a performance, you know, it's a very like distinguished British actor sort of vibe. And it's one of his books that's very fantasy based. Like it's almost like Lord of the Rings in a strange way, and there are like mythical type characters, but it's also just about these people in this village, and like memory is kind of disappearing, and community is disappearing, and everything's in this strange fog, and no one knows why. And it feels very timely to what is going on right now. I really like that. Sigrid Nunez's new book I just read that was really good. Those are my two.
Yeah.
So Buried Giant is the book the first one that
Well, you can chat the Altadena librarians, and we'll give you those titles if you're missing them. Caitlin, thank you so much. This has been such a treat. This is like, I love this. I hope everyone else enjoyed it. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to chat with us.
Yeah, of course. This was really nice. This was a very lovely, chill event, and you and I will get coffee when this is all.
Oh my gosh! Okay. No, I'm cool. I'm not freaking out. Okay. Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for joining. This video will be recorded and posted on YouTube, so you can watch it again and again and again, and listen to all of Caitlin's amazing words of wisdom. Listen to it as you fall asleep. Do whatever you need to.
I should have done the whole thing as ASMR, right?
Hi, this is Isabel and Caitlin with the Altadena Library.
You have to be unapologetic about corpses.
Corpse boss.
Hashtag corpse boss.
Oh my goodness. This has been so much fun. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for joining. Caitlin, have a lovely Halloween.
I will. Yeah. Happy Halloween, everyone. From my family to yours.
Yeah.
And everybody take care of yourself. You're, again, as I would say to my teenage self, you're doing great. You're doing wonderful.
We're all doing amazing. We're doing the best we can.
Yeah.
Let's all just like wear a mask and stay hydrated and go vote and keep on keeping on.
Wonderful. Unless you're 16.
Yeah. Yeah. Pre-register to vote then.
Yeah, exactly. I voted in California to let you vote before you're 18. So
yeah, there we go.
I'm looking out for you.
There we go. Thank you, Caitlin.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Altadena Library.
Bye.